This is a solution for Jacob's Chapter 2, Problem 19. I just posted a video for Jacob's Chapter 2, 16, which is a simpler problem than this. In that problem, we just wanted to do one thing, and that was calculate the total productivity, the dollars out on a product of cages. There was some kind of squirrel cage or something like that, and it showed us how much money what our sales figure was, how many sales we made, and we had to adjust some of the inputs because they weren't given in hard dollars. We were given a number of labor hours and what the labor rate was for those hours. So we wanted to keep everything in one unit, dollars, so we just multiplied those things out. So that was really what the exercise of 16 was all about. Chapter 9 or problem 19 here wants to ask more questions, not just total, but we're given some more data here about some company, not told what it is, what they make, or anything like that. But they give a breakdown of some of the inputs here. All right, here's the output across the top line of the chart. Sales were $200,000 last year, $220,000 this year. We made $20,000 more. So if you go down the inputs here, what it took to make that 220,000 or that 200,000, if we look at the inputs, we can see labor went up. Start taking a look at the trend of data here. You can see that the labor went up from $30,000 to $40,000, went up $10,000. That went up 33%. Okay, so sometimes put it in percentage and think about running a company. What happens if your labor costs went up 33%? And we don't know some of the circumstances around this. Did we start a new product, or where some of the labor might have gone? Raw materials, we used $10,000 more raw materials, so it sounds like we actually produced more this year, I'm thinking. Okay, so we used more energy, went from $5,000 to $6,000, and that was what, a 20% increase, because it's 6,000 minus $5,000 would be $1,000 difference. So our cost for energy went up $1,000, and $1,000 over last year, 1,000 over 5,000 is 20%. So it went up 20%. Here we held the capital investment constant. We put hard cold dollars in of $50,000 last year, same thing this year, and then we had some other expenses here, some overhead type things for whatever that might be. We don't know. Okay, but that went up. So almost everything went up except the cash that we put into the business, the hard capital cash that we have here. Okay. So the first thing we're asked, it says, here's the various financial data for the past 2 years. Calculate total productivity measures and partial measures for labor, capital, raw materials. So that's 3 of the 5 things down here. Okay. So here we are in Excel. I'm highly recommending that you do these things in Excel. Otherwise, doing by hand on a calculator is going to take you forever. And you've had a course that's covered Excel already, and this is pretty basic. Adding, subtracting, multiplying type things. It's nothing with advanced functions or anything. So below this is the screen grab of the actual problem out of the chapter that I took off the computer when I was in Connect. But here's the data. I just reproduced the data here. Okay. So maybe what we'll do is colorize this a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And I usually put things in a dark blue like that, and I'll change a font to white and make it bold. Okay. So that's a little bit of a show how to do some of this nice table work here, so that our eyes can catch this a little bit easier. We understand what's going on. Okay. So then I listed down here the productivities, the different ones we want. We want to do the total productivity. Okay. So one of the first things going to want to do in the total productivity, and what I'm going to do is put a line underneath our output here, just so we know that's separated. So this is almost a miniature P&L statement. Here's your revenue, your sales or revenues. We have that. And then we have our expenses below it. There's a miniature P&L. There you go. It's the start of how a company starts. It starts very simply like this, and it grows and grows and grows. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is total. So what we can do is we need to total up these 2 sets of expenses here. There's 2 years of expenses. I put in 2014, 2015. It is 2016, so we don't have complete data. This is normally what you would see. It appears to be like almost a year old or whatever when you see this kind of data. You don't have updated real-time data. Okay, so we're going to put in here it equals the sum of these columns here. Close it out with your paren. And there you have a total of all your expenses for 2014. And we just simply drag that over, and for free we get the next column. Okay, so you can see our expenses went up by $22,000. This isn't part of the problem, but I'm always curious. Let's take a look at this. Let's do something here. Put in a function. I just want to see percentage-wise overall how much the expenses went up. So then we have to do a little bit of a compound function here. So we're going to open it up with a paren, and we're going to take this number minus this number. So that's the change over the 2 years, right? And we want to put that over this year. So we want to see percentage-wise how the expenses grew. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make that a percent. Okay, so it went all in all the expenses went up by 18%. Okay. Put a total in here, and usually you want to do something like take this and fill it with some kind of yellow. Like that. Okay, so your total row. I can fix that. Okay, so the totals row, put in yellow. Look at that. You have a nice little chart here, right? This is why you do it in Excel. So doing problems like this should give you some practice there. And I just showed you a couple of small things to do to really just make it easier on your eyes. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Okay, so we want to take a look at the total productivity, which is the output over the input. Okay, so for total productivity, we're going to take for 2014. So understand where we're going with this problem. We're doing productivity once for 2014, once for 2015, and there'll be some upcoming questions about what the trend shows. Okay, so we can see what we can actually do is take this column here and just make it the difference between the 2 years. Let me just say that minus that. That's going to show what the difference in the 2 years is. It went up by $10,000. Just bring this down for free. You bring it down, it calculates it for all of that. Okay. I'll move this over just over here a little tad. Okay. And what we'll do is format that, and I'm going to borrow that from there. And so it went up $22,000. So this column here is the difference. It's 2015 number minus the 2014 number. All the numbers are positive. That means the trend was up, at least up in all of these situations. If they were negative, then you would see that it might have gone down. You might have spent less in a category. So these are your expense categories over here. Okay. So now that we have our totals, we have some of these differences, we can start calculating some things here. Okay. Total productivity is going to be your total sales over all your inputs, which was this number we just calculated there. Okay, so that's your total. It's dollars. It's a number or figure. The units of the numerator and denominator are in dollars, so you lose the dollar signs. This is just a ratio of the output over the input. So how do you interpret that? Okay, we have a lot of digits there. What we might want to do is format these cells here by going to number, doing percentage, and let's maybe hold it to 2 decimal places instead of all those that we see there. It will do the rounding on this. It will actually do the rounding. Okay, so it went up 163%. And I think for the purposes of this problem, I'm actually going to change that. We're not going to use percentage. We're going to use number and keep it to two decimal places because we're really talking about a ratio here. I don't want to confuse you by moving into percentages. So the sales of 2014 over the inputs was 1.64. Basically, you made 1.64 times the amount of money you put in. So it cost you $122,000 in business this year, and it produced $200,000. That's basically indicating your margin. That's pretty good. That's a nice return on your money for that year. Okay. So now we could calculate. Since we're using Excel, it's easy enough to do all of them. We'll do labor, capital, and raw materials, I guess, are what we needed to calculate up here. Okay. So something we'll do here is I'm going to grab something here, and if you use F4, do what I'm just doing here in Excel, highlight the cells that you want. If you use F4, it turns it into absolute referencing here. See the dollar signs that went in up here at the top in the function bar? It turned it from just a plain cell C3 into $C $3, which makes that an absolute cell. And I'll explain that again. Here's a little bit. This is more Excel than the problem itself. So now what I can do is drag this down here, and that didn't work. Okay, so now we're going to figure out what the productivity in labor was. Okay, so what we're going to do is take our output was $200,000. I'm going to subtract by the labor costs, which were $30,000. Try that one more time. This is going to equal, the output was 200,000 over the labor number, and get 6.67. For capital, how much capital we put in there? Again, we're going to put in there, the output was $200,000 over the capital invested, and we'll put that in there. So we got the output. Now we're doing the partial productivity ratio. We did the total, we're doing a partial. Okay, we're only using certain factors here, one at a time. And finally, that's going to equal $200,000 over the raw materials. Okay, there we go. So we set ourselves up a table here that shows some productivity numbers. Okay. Now what we can do is we can grab these and for free drag it over here, and it automatically calculates the factors that we actually just did calculate. So immediately you can start making some observations here. Okay. Because the real question is, what do these measures tell you about this company? Okay. Per se, any one year, we don't know whether these are good numbers or bad numbers. Okay, that's to be decided a different way. But what happens is year over year, we can at least see the trend that's happening. And what happened here is from 2014 to 2015, we made less money. Our productivity was less overall. That's not a good sign. I would think you're going to agree that overall the productivity went down. It went from 1.64 to 1.39. Okay? We don't want to see that. We want to see more efficiency happen. We would love to see this to be 1.75 or 2.0, where we were very efficient. We had less loss in the second year. So overall, we can see a little bit of a problem. Okay, the labor we actually comparatively made less. In other words, the percent increase in labor, which was 25%, right? We take this number for free and drag it up. You can see that 33% increase in labor costs over this year. We can see that we had a 29% material cost increase. We saw that energy went up by 20%. Capital we held constant. And this other category went up 50%. Okay? So I'm doing the same problem, and I'm just showing a little bit of a different analysis, how we're looking at it. Because we know that let's take a look at what the percent increase in sales were. We only went up in sales by 10%, and relatively year over year, our labor went up 33%, our raw materials went up 29%, our energy went up 20%, and our other went up 50%. This is how you manage your business. This is why we're doing these productivity numbers, because we're looking at it. If any of these numbers are higher than 10%, then they didn't rise commensurately with the sales. Sales went up, but it didn't track the use of expenses. Okay, so I'm saying this about 3 or 4 different ways, just so you see it. So what we're showing over here is very similar to these numbers. It's a slight different form of it, but for all intents and purposes, for quiz and homework type things, we're really just going by the exact definition of productivity, which is the output over whatever inputs, which inputs that you're going to do. Okay, that should pretty much cover it. Any questions, please email me with those, and I'll address them. Thanks very much.